That's okay. I can manage it.
All right.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. As you know, we are Women of Law, myself and Brenda DeRouen. I'm Christy Blurden. I'm a family law attorney in Houston and Austin, Texas. And Brenda asked me to start Women of Law in 2017. And about a year or so after that, we asked Brittany, who was then Mendoza, now Brittany Curry, to join us. And we formed the directors of the 501c nonprofit Women of Law. The plan for today is to have a formal yet informal discussion on how to be an ally in the legal profession. And the goal with our panel this evening is to have a talk about how race and gender affect both Black and minority women in the legal profession, and what white attorneys, women and men alike, can do to kind of facilitate and acknowledge these real issues that we've had and that we're continuing to see. And I'm really excited for the group of women that we have that are going to speak today, and excited for you guys to learn a little bit more about Women of Law. Okay. So just a small tidbit on Women of Law. We were again created in 2017, and the goal is to connect, inspire, and promote women in the legal community. So our primary focus is on younger law students, Black women, minority women, who aren't really getting the recognition that they deserve within the legal community. Promoting those women, providing scholarships for those women, and really networking to improve the numbers that we see, the 2%, the 4% makeup of Black and minority women in the legal profession. And I know we have a short video clip that we'd like to show everybody today. So Brenda, if you could get that started. Brenda, I think we're having a sound issue. Do you want to restart and push the sound?
What's so interesting is that the sound always works on the test runs.
It does, yeah. Brenda, can you stop the presentation and start it over? There's still no sound.
I'm sorry, guys.
It worked just fine on the test run.
And I'm trying to, can you guys see this toolbar at the top? I'm trying to make it smaller.
No, we can't see the toolbar.
Okay, perfect. I'm so sorry. I had myself on mute. Let's get it started again.
There we go.
Hi, I'm attorney Brenda DeRouen, and I'm so excited to tell you about Women of Law, a social media platform designed to empower, inspire, and propel women in the legal field. I'd also like to introduce you to two amazing women who are helping to lead the mission.
My name is Christy Blurden. I've been practicing family law for about 4 years here in Houston. As a young attorney, social media is the new normal for marketing and resource content. When Brenda contacted me about what was just an Instagram page, I thought I'd be sending a few tips to fellow attorneys and law students. I never imagined what Women of Law could be at that time 2 years ago.
My name is Brittany Mandarino. I'm a law student at South Texas College of Law. I answered the call to join Women of Law because I understand the importance of creating a network of resources and meaningful connections, and building a strong brand early in my career. Over the past year, Women of Law has helped connect women's organizations from all three of Houston's law schools. This is a great benefit for women law students and the attorneys we are fortunate to build relationships with.
Adding Brittany to the table was a necessity. The three of us together engineered this ever-growing vehicle for women in the legal industry. And trust me, we will continue to add cars to this train and invite every woman who's connected to the law to join this ride.
The platform continues to grow and lay the foundation for an incredible community of partner organizations and businesses who all have the same goal in mind, advancing women in the practice of law. And I'm honored to be a part of this incredible team of women leaders.
We've not only made an impact locally, but globally. The Women of Law platform has allowed us to connect with women attorneys from as far away as Hong Kong, Germany, Iran, and Australia.
Women of Law has taught me that there is a need to encourage and inspire women to grow and adapt. But there is a more serious need to educate women about the issues that really affect us as a whole.
Indeed, there is a serious imbalance of women representation.
But there is an even greater imbalance for women of color.
We know the stats. Now, what are we going to do about it?
Together, we can create opportunities for promising young women of color
to pursue their dreams through the Women of Law Scholarship Fund.
And through grants given to law firms that show a commitment to our mission.
This has to be our focus, and Women of Law is ready to answer the call.
All right, thank you, Brenda. So just a little, these are just a few facts about Women of Law thus far. So our current following on Instagram, which has the biggest impact in our ability to connect, inspire, and promote women. And right now, our goal is really centered around Harris County and the surrounding counties and those law students and lawyers in need. But we do have a global impact, and we have tripled in followers since 2019. Since we've started Women of Law, we have given away 3 scholarships to minority law students, which has significantly helped them with bar study and preparations. And we recently joined in partnership with Judge Sonia Heath of the 310th Judicial District Court in Harris County, who has agreed to provide judicial clerkships, paid judicial clerkships for 3 law students that came directly through Women of Law. So we are excited for what's to come and future collaborations. And we believe that the discussion and touch points on today's panel are imperative to moving the ball forward and just increasing knowledge and understanding about what's going on for minority and Black women in the legal community. So to introduce our panelists and our moderator today, we have the pleasure of the panel being moderated by Ms. Troy Washington. She is a Emmy nominated journalist, originally from El Campo, Texas, but currently located in Indianapolis as a reporter for ABC WRTV. And we are so excited that her passion for journalism has brought us here to us. And we're grateful that she's agreed to moderate this panel today. First up on the panel, we will have Ms. Brenda DeRouen, the founder of Women of Law. I think it's important for Brenda's perspective, not only as the founder of this organization, but also the impact that she's had within the legal community, now being a minority owner of her own law firm, the DeRouen Law Firm, and recently hiring an associate. And she has had countless law clerks come through both the Women of Law program and just the local law schools. So her impact has been widespread on the issues that we're discussing today. She has a passion for women empowerment, and I see that every single day that we have a conversation about Women of Law. And so I'm really excited to hear what she has to say today on today's panel. Next up is attorney Audia Jones. She is a personal injury attorney who focuses primarily on auto accidents, small business counsel, and unlawful employment actions. Something unique about Audia is that she previously worked at the Harris County District Attorney's Office and actually ran for Harris County District Attorney. Although she finished as runner-up, she still kind of, I think, has become a spokesperson for a lot of these issues. And I'm really excited about what Audia is going to say today. Because I've watched her on several other panels that are discussing these race issues and gender issues. And I think, although there's a widespread focus on police brutality, I think what's going on in the legal community is equally as important. And so I really appreciate you being with us today, Audia. Next up is Rocio Mendoza. She is a senior energy associate at the Baker McKenzie offices in Houston. She advises on a diverse range of domestic and international energy related transactions. Something special about Rocio is that she has a commitment to the community, and she has been honored as a woman to watch by the Houston Business Journal, as well as named Latino Leaders Magazine's Houston Club leader. And lastly, we have Jazzmine Woodard. Jazzmine is a diversity and inclusion advisor with her office, and she has special experience with talent acquisition, university relations, and HR compliance. And she leads communications and external partnerships that shape messaging about equity and contribution and inclusivity. One second. Jazzmine is a diversity and inclusion. Someone who's watching, there we go. Make sure everybody's audio is off here. Okay, sorry, Jazzmine, to interrupt your introduction. A special fact about Jazzmine that I didn't know that, or I don't think she knows, that I wanted to shout out today. She is also the founder of Dash of Jazz blog. You can find her on Instagram. She has amazing recipes and life hacks, and many of these include how you can practice anti-racism in the workplace. And so if you are interested in seeing more about those types of life hacks, please check her out there. All right, so at this time, I'm going to pass the microphone, to the figurative microphone, to Troy. And if everyone can make sure, if they're not muted, we're going to try to manage that. But please, if you are not a panelist, please keep your microphone muted. And Troy, if you would take it away for us.
Well, thank you, Chrissy. I think you did an excellent job of introducing everyone. And thank you guys for having me here with you guys during this. Now, when Brenda asked me to participate, she kind of explained that you guys are the 2%ers. And I think that that is a big deal when we talk about diversity and we talk about that seat at the table. So we'll jump right in. I just want to hear you guys' thoughts on when it comes to race and bias when it comes to gender in law. What have you experienced, and how can we act as allies, or how can we help our fellow attorney along with that in your industry? If anyone wants to go first.
I'll go first.
Anyone wants to go first?
Yeah, I don't mind jumping in. It's funny. And first of all, I want to say thank you so much to the Women of Law, especially Brenda and Christy, for having me on here. I've been following you guys for a while now. So I'll start off by saying, when we talk about that, when we talk about being an ally, and then Troy, when you ask that specific question, the first thing that comes to mind is a story of something that happened during a deposition. And a lot of people think, with the legal profession, everybody is professional. And that's not always the case. And I've come home countless times and I've told my husband, I'm like, they only tried that because I was a female. And a lot of times it may only be because I'm a Black female. And so one thing in particular is during a deposition, I had an attorney called my client a dude or a boy. And, you know, if anybody knows me, and I think, you know, Brenda and Christy are pretty familiar when I was running, I really don't take anything sitting down. And if I believe that someone's being disrespectful, I'm going to address it. I addressed it at the deposition. It went so left. The attorney pretty much, I didn't even know if he was speaking English after that point. But he like got up, stormed out, his nose started running. I almost got to the point where I felt so physically threatened. I thought I was going to have to call my husband. And it's very interesting how, you know, something like that may not happen to a lot of our male counterparts, and it may not happen to other females of other ethnicities. But that was one thing that came to mind, and that wasn't the first time, and it wasn't the last time. You know, I think a lot of times they expect us as female attorneys to kind of come in, be quiet, you know, be seen, not heard. And once you start advocating, I mean, the tables are turned by the end of whatever's going on, whether it's a hearing or a deposition or a phone meeting. It's like, I don't want to deal with you anymore. So that's the first experience that comes to my mind, and some of the things that you just have to really build up a tough demeanor for, I think, as a female, especially a Black female attorney.
You really explained standing up for yourself, but how do we eliminate that bias, or is that possible, or how do you balance that professionalism while not coming off as the angry Black woman in a sense? So how do you balance that?
Before she goes, I was just going to go ahead and answer that question too. I think you made a very valid point that we are the 2%, and that is not something to be taken lightly. As a Black woman, we are really unicorns. So if you know a Black woman attorney, like, you really know a rare breed of people here in America. And just like Audia, you know, we have so many stories that we can tell. I think the issue, and one of the things that I find myself as a practicing attorney is, I'm a litigator, so I try cases. And so, you know, my style is a little bit more to the point, a little more aggressive. The facts are the facts. And because I'm already Black, and because I'm a woman, it can come off as that angry Black woman. And so for me, it's been trying to learn how to be assertive, and how to be professional, but also not being offended when I'm called an angry Black woman.
Okay. Anyone else have any input on resolving it or solving that bias?
And what I will say, I think with Brenda's point, what I would do, I mean, and I've actually had experiences, you know, if they start the name calling, the best way to understand how to play the game is to know the rules of the game. So I played Division I basketball. When you understand ethics, when you understand the rules, when you understand the bounds, if you do have an attorney that comes off like that, always document it, send them a follow-up email. So that way I see we have at least one judge on the call, hi, Judge Englehart. If any other judges are actually watching, you know, if that's something where you have to go before the court, that is literally an ethical violation, because you are supposed to have that professional relationship. And so that's something you document, and you just keep it, the facts are the facts. But yes, you're right. We don't have that luxury a lot of times of just kind of being ourselves. We have to know the laws. We have to know the boundaries. We have to know the rules of playing the game, and then the rules to stand up for ourselves once a line is crossed. So.
Yeah, and Troy, I would say, and hi everybody, this is Rocio Mendoza. Again, thank you to Brenda and Christy for organizing that. This is in particular a place where I think allies really come in handy. So I've seen several situations where when you see something, do something. If you see someone step out of line, I think sometimes it's easier for someone in the majority group, be it a man or be it the Caucasian person, to step in and be the one who calls it out. I think that's what we've been working on actively, sort of through our D&I efforts at the firm, is having that outlook, keeping a lookout and being a true ally, a proactive ally to your fellow colleagues who are women or of any minority group, and saying something. I think sometimes people hear things differently when it comes from a specific source, then they hear it. To Brenda and Audia's point about, the angry minority person. If a fellow Caucasian person says it, somehow some folks are more receptive to the message.
And I think that leads us to our next discussion. So Rocio, you can kind of start with that. How can you be of support? How can you act as an ally? I know that when Christy kind of talked to me yesterday, that was her biggest thing. How can we be of support to those 2%ers? How can we stand by you? How can we make sure that seat at the table is available? So maybe you can get the ball rolling on that and someone else can pick it up.
Yeah, so I've had a male partner who I work with quite frequently, who is incidentally also Hispanic, but sort of physically, racially looks Caucasian. And but for his last name, you might not know that he's Hispanic at all. I had an incident on a call where a counterparty got really aggressive and essentially engaged in a yelling match, yelling over me. And he called it out really quickly. He sort of texted me while on the call and said, let me step in, and called it out on the spot and said, before Rocio was rudely interrupted, this is what she was trying to say. And he did say, I would appreciate more respect for my colleague. I suspect you would not have treated me in that way. And so I think those very active, teachable moments in the moment are helpful to address. Obviously, you have to kind of play it by ear. There's certain scenarios where that might not be the automatic course of action, might not be the way to go. But I do think starting to actively think of doing something is a good place to start.
So number one, you can stand up, you can defend your colleague and just have their back in a situation that you notice them just kind of in trouble. So anyone else have any input on that?
Yeah, Troy, I would say, and I think it kind of captures a bit of both what Audia mentioned in the previous answer and Rocio mentioned here, but allyship is rooted in action. So until you're actually taking action on behalf of someone who belongs to a marginalized group, in this case, we're talking about Black women, you aren't actually an ally. So the first step is educating yourself, and that really kind of just brings you onto the level of being an aware human being. You're not quite yet an ally, actually. And then using your voice to speak out, as Rocio mentioned, against things that you might see, hear, or observe, and calling them out, but also passing the mic, which is something that's come up more recently as a really popular term, but that is to say amplifying the voices of those who often go unheard. So a lot of times people are tapped for opportunities or expertise, and much of it is based on who you know, not necessarily what you know. And sometimes you can find yourself in a scenario where you don't necessarily have the right answers or have the right background to tackle an opportunity that you've been presented with. And rather than kind of faking your way through or getting that expertise from someone else and presenting it as your own, even with their permission, perhaps refer the opportunity to the person that you would have asked for help in the first place, or use that opportunity to amplify someone else to a platform that they too might have earned, but wouldn't have had the opportunity to take advantage of otherwise. So I think action is the biggest kind of sign of an ally, and calling others out or calling them in, whichever kind of approach you prefer to take, helps to illuminate a lot of the things that historically have been given the benefit of the doubt, or, can become a he said, she said thing. If more than one person is not only noticing it, but acknowledging it, that sends a signal to the person who kind of commits those transgressions, so to speak, but also gives everyone else room to analyze and to see what's really going on.
So like she said, education, action, and acknowledgement. And Brenda, you had some input as well?
Right. So when I think of allyship, there's a quote, and if you guys can see it on the screen, it's by Kalani Tonga. And it says, be mindful of which voices are missing from the table. Seek out and amplify those voices. So Rocio and Jazzmine pretty much said everything that I was going to say. But it's important that we have discussions like what Women of Law is having today, so that our allies can learn what our issues are, so that they can be better able and better equipped to be our allies. So one of those things is lend a hand. You know, there's a lot of social injustices going on right now. We have a lot of protests and a lot of uprising with what's going on in our community. And if you want to be an ally, ask yourself, you know, how do I lend a hand? How do I make an impact? Where do I fit in all of these causes? And make sure that you're passionate about it, because at the end of the day, it doesn't stop with when one cause has ended, when one situation has ended. It does not stop. It is a lifetime commitment to be an ally. So it's important that you are engaging in discussions like this, so that you can educate yourself. And then also, don't belittle what someone else is telling you. You know, if you're on the other side, what may be something simple and not a big deal to you can very well be a big deal to the party or to the cause that you're trying to support.
And like she said, with lending a hand, don't be afraid to ask how you can help, because sometimes you want to help and you don't know specifically where your assistance is needed. So I think that that's helpful as well. Now, just kind of getting into diversity, and maybe Jazzmine, you can speak to this also, but when we look at diversity, how important is it, you know, when it comes to law firms or in this industry? But also, does affirmative action even apply anymore? Because that was a term that we used to hear. We don't hear it as much anymore, but we do. Diversity is always encouraged. So if anyone can kind of speak to what that does in any industry to kind of level things out and balance out the industry.
Sure. So my arena of expertise is corporate oil and gas, and many people shrink away from the term affirmative action, and kind of brings to mind set-asides or quotas. And it is still very much a thing. It is obligatory for any organization over a certain size that is a federal contractor or subcontractor. And in doing diversity and compliance work, I kind of look at compliance, so that is to say equal employment opportunity and affirmative action, to be kind of the core curriculum, or just the day school kinds of things. These are your basics, trying to build a workforce that is reflective of the community it serves or works in. That's essentially the goal of affirmative action. And then diversity and inclusion is more of the extracurricular stuff. If people have really a strong interest in the subject matter, they'll kind of seek that out and go the extra mile beyond just strictly numerical representation. But really, diversity is a fact and inclusion is an act. That's something we kind of say in our industry. The world is a diverse place. Unfortunately, the reflection that we've seen in workplaces, in professional careers, especially the higher up you go, has largely been representative of only one part of that diversity. And so the goal, what should be the goal, is to have equitable representation across all industries, across all levels, because I'm sure even in the legal profession, there are positions that are perhaps more esteemed than others, or some that are higher paying, or you have more opportunity, you have more prestige with a certain type of job. And so really, if everything were equal and fair, then in any organization, no matter how you slice it, it would look just like the surrounding community. But we know that that's not the case. So diversity and inclusion efforts, diversity efforts specifically, are to furthering to that end, to get more people in the mix, so to speak, that look like what a community looks like based on wherever you're located. Inclusion is everything you do once someone is within an organization to help them feel truly a part of the team, to be attentive to and respectful of their points of view, and to recognize that that diversity of views truly makes for a richer and often more profitable experience at an organization.
Thank you, Jazzmine. That was very enlightening. And I like what you did there and how you pointed out that it's not just about diversity, it's also about inclusion. So anyone else have anything to say about diversity as well as inclusion? Go ahead, Audia.
Yeah, so I mean, and it's funny you laugh, Troy, because I'm like, oh, I'm usually straight, no chaser. So, you know, one of the things that I've had, like, you know, even seeing experiences on both sides, working as a prosecutor, now having my own law practice, and then, of course, being a law student who clerked at, you know, on the United States District Court and in mid-sized firms, you know, one of the things I noticed, diversity, I think, is great when it's not phony. I think so too often we see these diversity programs, right? And it really is to just meet a quota. And a lot of times, like for instance, and I don't know why I cannot, well, I won't even call them out. I thought about the firm that I worked for my summer of my second year in Atlanta. Did a great job. Pay was great. I was the only Black female that was there. I want to say I was actually the only Black summer associate that was there, period. And it was interesting when I knew that it was phony and it was just to hit a quota, is when I got to the last interview of the last day. It was with one of the managing partners. And before he discussed my work performance, which I had gotten rave reviews about, he was like, oh, thanks for coming. I think you should try and get a clerkship with a judge. So it was never their intent to really honestly look at hiring anybody that was of a different racial background. So when we look at diversity, I think it's just like our criminal legal system. The first thing is we have to admit, like, looking at things past terms, looking at it past the surface view, go a little bit deeper and say, what does this diversity really stand for? What are the actions below it? What are the numbers? Do the numbers match up with what we're saying? Are we just calling a diversity program, sticking a Black woman or a Black man or a Hispanic man at the top of that program? And then when we look at the makeup of a firm, or when we look at the makeup of a program, who are we really bringing in? So, you know, like most things, I like to see actions, not words. So the first thing that came to my mind when I heard diversity or affirmative action, a lot of times it's just been running through the motions to hit a quota and then get back to business as usual. So, you know, I think, like I said, once socially or society can get past the look of things and get to the real numbers that support that, that's when I think it'd be helpful and useful.
Thank you, Audia. I think that is true. You want to make sure it's real and that it's genuine, and from that type of place of inclusion instead of just meeting a quota, as many people have mentioned. Does anyone else have anything to say before we move on?
Yeah, I'll piggyback a little, Troy, on what Audia is saying. I think ultimately the proof, right, if you will, of a true commitment in any work environment is the retention and promotion of your diverse candidates. It's great to get them in the door. It's great to not just interview them and consider them and you know, make your numbers look good, but it's great to actually get them into your workplace working with your teams. But then you don't get the benefit of the diversity that we all know exists unless the people who are diverse stay, right? And so I think even once folks are in the door, I think what makes the folks on this call who are of a diverse background unicorns is that there's a lot of attrition. People leave and there's all sorts of reasons. And I'm sure we could have a whole other session talking about what those reasons are. But until workplaces are truly committed to working on those issues, I think that's when we'll really see if they mean it, right? If they mean the inclusion piece and the true value.
How do we close that gap when you look at making sure that you're advancing some of those 2%ers, that they're getting promoted and that they're going to these different places to where they can reach back and they can help others along the way? How do we keep that advancement going and closing that gap?
Yeah, sure. So I think step one is actually mentoring folks. I think many diverse folks come into a work setting, and then, you know, to Audia's point, it's like, yay, we met this quota, we've ticked this box, and they're often forgotten, and folks aren't, you know, maybe it's not on purpose, but I'll say in the big law firm setting, which is the setting I'm familiar with, it's not uncommon for certain folks who have long-standing ties with other big law lawyers, whether it be their parent or the parents of their friends, to get more attention and more mentorship and more guidance, and most importantly, better work opportunities. So that the kinds of transactions you're on, you know, giving you work that's increasingly more challenging to build your skill set. Those kinds of things, unfortunately, don't seem to be happening quite as automatically or organically for lawyers of color. And I think that's where law firms really need to spend the focus, training and making deliberate decisions and efforts to start from day one when you have your junior associates in the door, to train them and pay attention to them and give them the right opportunities. And as you move up the ranks, you know, you give senior associates like me the opportunity to lead a deal or to interact and be in constant communications directly with the client, and to start managing some of those client relationships, because that's ultimately the metric on which you're measured, right? Can you bring in business? So I think at every juncture of the career, it looks different, but it all boils down to giving people access and resources.
Good points, mentorships and the access that they need to advance, and then placing emphasis on advancing and creating that inclusion and diversity. Anyone else have anything to say on that note before we move on to the next discussion?
I would even go further to say, you know, inclusion is also about a certain level of comfort. And I can only speak from a Black woman's perspective. And I'm just going to stop sharing the screen really quickly. And I would like, if I could see people's faces, like raise your hand if you've ever had to consider in the morning, you know, how you're gonna do your hair to go to work. Like, how must I do my hair, right? So a lot of people don't understand, but as an African-American woman, that is a big decision every morning that I wake up, is how am I going to do my hair? It's not, oh, let me put it in a ponytail and be professional. It's, wow, I have braids. Does this come off as professional? Is it marketable? Can I truly wear my natural hair? Must I perm my hair? Must I wear a wig? Like, these are real things, and it doesn't seem like a big deal to other people, like, oh, just put your hair up. But for a Black woman, like, it is a huge issue when we enter the workforce. And it's also an issue when it comes to retention rate. We spend a lot of time as attorneys in our offices with our work family. We spend so much time. And for me, if I can't be myself, you know, there is a professional level of character that you must present, right? I'm not saying, hey, go there and just be, we keeping it real. Don't be ratchet, right? Don't go, you know, doing too much. But, you know, when I can't just be myself, my authentic, natural self, I have to code switch, or I have to put too much emphasis on things that doesn't matter. I don't want to be in that workspace.
Yeah. So I was going to actually continue that conversation off of what she just introduced. I was noticing, as we're all on the panel, I have knotless, and I can see that Jazzmine, you have braids as well, and Audia, you have a bun with braids as well. Brenda, braids. So it's become accepted now, and I think a lot of us grew up with braids, but we got into the workforce in our respective careers, and somewhere along the lines we were led to believe that it's not professional. And so I think that that's kind of reversing now, and it's good to see. But can anyone explain or speak to that, just as a professional woman, as a 2%er, or in your respective craft, just the evolution of your hairstyle in a sense, and how that represents you?
I'm like, I had to jump on that because I'm like, I love what Brenda was saying. I love that she went and and then Troy, you just picked up with it. I mean, I don't have braids, it's my natural hair, but I think, no, that's fine. I mean, I think, you know, one of the things, what I intentionally did, or I do, number one, I work for myself, right? So I work at the law office of Audia Jones. I wear my hair however I want to. I have red fingernails. I do dress professionally just because I like to. And of course, I can add my own flair. But of course, when, you know, I used to clerk at the mid-sized firms or the Exxon Mobils or even on Capitol Hill or the United States District Court for the District of Columbia, I had to be very careful and wear neutral nail polish. And, you know, does my hair look okay? And is it straight? And, you know, I had to fit into this mold. I think it got to a certain point. I'll run my own business and I'll make my own decisions. And of course, you know, we'll build our generational wealth so my kids will never have to experience that. But I will say I was very, very intentional. I know Christy brings up the run, but when I ran for a district attorney, I was very intentional in putting Senegalese, what did I have? I think I had, no, they were braids. So I had braids in a style, if you saw it, I kept it like that. Because I said, you know, any young girl that's actually, you're welcome, Judge Engelhardt, young girl that is out there that's watching, that feels like, you know, when we have a profession such as the district attorney, that's 1% female, and I think it's like 0.05% are Black females across the United States. I wanted to make a statement. And it definitely did, because I got a call a day before voting from Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, and was like, "Hey, I heard you're my twin. I'm endorsing you." You know, and I said, you know, I was like, "You influenced my hairstyle," but again, it was something I did very, very intentionally, to say, "Hey, you don't have to fit in to be a good leader." To know it, to show people you know exactly what it is that you're doing. Sometimes you do have to take some of the critique and the heat as a trailblazer. And I think even Troy, you know, the fact that you have the braids in and you're an Emmy award-winning journalist. I mean, where did we see that before? Maybe Melissa Harris Perry. You know, I can only really think of like one. And so, you know, I applaud you for doing that. Thank you. But yeah, we can be our own unique selves and still come with fire. I mean, you know, come there prepared. We come there with a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, real life experience. But I love the fact that I can get up and just do what I want with my hair. Don't have to be concerned or you know, like I said, when you're in your own practice, or when you're paving your own way, you choose your hair.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that, you know, hair is an issue for every woman. It is. It really is. Just makeup, like, you know, it's a lot to be a woman, okay? It is a lot to be a woman. But specifically speaking from the African-American perspective, it takes me hours. This was like 8 hours of just sitting and braiding hair to have a neat look that may come off as unprofessional. And I think Troy, her and I talked not too long ago. Actually, this is Troy's first time ever wearing her braids on TV. And it was a big deal. Like, it was a big deal. Like, how am I going to go to work with braids in my hair? And I think representation matters. I think we are 2%ers, but we are courageous, you know, 2%ers, and we're paving a way for young girls to be able to enter this workforce as their natural selves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of what we're talking about with appearance, I mean, there's historical context for it, right? Black women's hair was literally something that was policed and politicized to the point that it is a radical statement to wear your hair in a certain way, whether you're on a public platform like Troy or in a smaller work environment. I am 6 years into my career with my current company, and this 2020 was the first year that I ever wore braids in my hair. And it's a result of both like an internal shift as to what Audia referenced, you know, what is your mark that you're going to leave? Who are you representing? And what kind of vision do you want to paint? But also external shifts, like we've heard, or I'm sure most of us have heard about laws and local ordinances that are gaining traction to ban basically texture discrimination or discrimination on how someone presents at work with their hair, there are still corporate policies on the books that police the way that you can wear your hair at work, and they're on their face, you know, very neutral, but in how they're applied, it actually discriminates against people of color. And so I think that it's both an internal and an external thing. I would say that all of this relates to the concept of like an emotional tax that people of color and specifically Black women pay in the workplace. And so it's that thinking, those extra steps and processes that you have to go to in order to fit into a community or society or a workplace that has been largely defined by white men historically. So the standard of what is professional and what is acceptable is very narrow, and you're not doing anything wrong by being outside of that standard, but it's such a battle to try to get, you know, accepted for showing up as you are.
So much great input on this, because this is such a, and this topic can go on and on, especially since I feel like, you know, braids is a protective style, and a lot of people don't realize that and what maintenance it takes for natural hair. But moving on, what can judges do in their courtrooms to kind of minimize some of that bias and to make sure that they're being fair when it comes to race and gender? And
Be respectful. Be respectful and understand that it's more than just you out in that big wide world. You know, I can give you an example. When I was actually a prosecutor, I remember this must have happened like maybe about 3 years into my career. I was a chief in a court. The judge is no longer the sitting judge. He has been taken over by one of the 19. But you know, one of the things that the judge said to me, and I mean, this is in open court. There's a gallery full of people. The clerk's out there, the coordinator, and I'd worn my natural hair out, and I'd had it in braids for a while before that. But I'd worn my natural hair out, and the judge from the bench was like, "Oh, everybody look at Audia. She looks like she stuck her finger in a light socket." Oh. And I don't even know if you know it, like my voice is shaking when I said that. And like I said, having played basketball and being married to someone military, and just my dad being military, my mom just being strong-willed, I have very thick skin. So of course, you know, I fired right back. And I was like, "Judge, last time I checked, you're bald." So I wouldn't say anything about anybody's hair. Like I said this right in front of open court. Yeah. And I said, you know, everybody's hair doesn't grow straight like the other defense attorneys. So, you know, I pointed it out. And it was a response where I thought it was still professional. I was very angry. And I still remember it like it was yesterday. But it was interesting. I will say the responses that I got, the clerk who was sitting there, the coordinator, both of them who are African-American, one of them who actually had natural hair but had her hair in more of a twist style, started laughing to side with the judge. And the other African-American female, you know, started snickering as well, but she had a wig on her hair. And, you know, a lot of things that we can look at is the lack of security and insecurity. Like Jazzmine had pointed out, you have to be proud of who you are. You have to be, you do have to be strong-willed, and you have to understand what you do have is beautiful, whether it grows straight, whether it grows curly. I mean, that's what you have. That's what you have been given. And so, but for me, specifically having had that interaction with that judge, I don't see too many of the sitting judges. We have some amazing people that are on the bench now that are more understanding. But I think, yes, I think first, just always being respectful to counsel that comes in there. Understanding a lot of people either work for themselves and they can do as they choose, you know, as long as they're not doing or saying anything disrespectful to the court. And quite frankly, I don't think hair is any of their business. So, you know, there's a time and a place for everything. If they're prepared with their case law and prepared to present their case and stand up for their client, let's focus on that. So that's my perspective. Stay focused on what matters when you're in court as a sitting judge.
So show respect all the way around. And as you kind of mentioned a little bit, that we're standing together, even the 2%ers have to
Oh,
stand
yeah.
together. And I want to go ahead and get into these questions and answer this segment because we're getting some questions rolling in. So I'm going to start with Megan. And she put in the chat, how can we increase diversity and diversity initiatives within the law schools? I'm the director of ADR program at UH Law Center, and we'd love to have, well, some of you strong women speak, mentor, and coach. So the first part is a question. How can we increase that diversity in the law schools?
I would say I've recently looked at the numbers, and I do believe that the number of African American women who are being admitted into law school has increased drastically. Don't quote me. I don't remember the numbers, but it is definitely on the rise. How do you increase it more in the law school is you go into schools that otherwise would not have attorneys or people who look like them come into those schools. So Christy can jump on as soon as I'm done to talk about one of the programs that Women of Law has. But for me, I never seen a Black attorney until I went to a Black HBCU law school. I never seen a Black lawyer, period. So how I identified as being a lawyer is beyond me, but there's a lot of people, there's a saying that you can't be what you can't see. And so it's important for, if you have a mentorship program, is that you go into these underserved schools and you make sure that these young kids have people who look like them in our profession to show them, hey, it is possible. And, you know, and even on top of that is have people that come from those neighborhoods, come from those types of backgrounds who go into those communities and say, hey, I was raised exactly just like you, maybe, you know, maybe even worse, so that they have someone to identify with and they have a role model or someone that they can call if they have any concerns or issues as it relates to being an attorney of color.
And please, guys, write your questions right here in the group chat, and I will read them and get them to the panel. So if anyone else has a question, please put that in the Zoom group chat and I'll read it aloud for the panel.
Sure, I would add to Brenda's point, answering Megan's question, also incorporating and increasing more diverse voices into the selection and decision process or the recruiting process for students. Because a lot of times it's very easy to get into a very narrow way of defining success, or will this student be successful? Do they have what it takes? And you're basing it off a group of people who all have very similar backgrounds that are completely different from the group of students that you're looking at. So even if you get a diverse candidate pool of students, if you don't have anyone in the room when their applications are being reviewed that could speak to an experience similar to theirs, to say, well, this is what they're talking about, and you may not have line of sight to that, but it is relevant to this kind of work in XYZ ways, then you won't wind up admitting very many of those students. From my recruiting background, we once had a candidate who was being considered for a very high level position, and they were like, oh, well, you know, I've never even heard of this school. It was an HBCU. And they were like, Jazzmine, is this a real school? I've never heard of it before. And I was like, yeah, it's a real accredited school that, graduates, X number of people per year. But just that, not having that awareness, not having that exposure, they could have very easily said, well, we don't even know what that is. We haven't heard of it. We're going to pass. And that was actually the person that wound up being hired.
Wow. Anyone else have anything before we move on to the next question? I have time for one more.
Yeah, for Megan, that was a great question. You can always call us. I think what Women of Law is doing right now is bringing together a lot of attorneys that you may not see on an everyday basis unless you just happen to be in the courtroom at a certain time. You can always email or call me. I work for myself. Again, I set my own schedule. But yeah, you feel free to email or call. I'd love to come speak or talk to the students or even mentor. I see one of my mentees, Michaela, is on here. But I think it's it's awesome to reach one, teach one. And I have absolutely no problem reaching back. I know Brenda does as well. And I'm sure the other ladies on here do, but yeah, you can always reach out and we can, would love to help.
So, Tori, if I can jump in about the Women of Law project and kind of what we're doing specifically on this particular issue, if that's okay?
Go ahead.
Women of Law has joined with Bianca Roberson, who created a program called We Will. And her program is designed in connection and partnership with one of a local elementary school in Harris County. And the hope is that we can expand to other, in need schools in the Harris County area and further and beyond. But the goal is to bring in minority and Black lawyers and have them speak with students. And these are schools that have primarily students of color about being a lawyer and show them that lawyers of color exist, Black women lawyers exist. And I think that's just so important. And I also think related to the issue of HBCUs, I went to Thurgood Marshall School of Law. Technically, I was a minority at the school because it is an HBCU, but there's a stigma that's associated with these HBCUs, to go to Jazzmine's point, that people don't even know they exist or consider them real schools. And that negatively impacts, law students who are applying to these big firms. These big firms are looking for the PWI, law student. They're not looking at the HBCU law student. Well, why the hell not? I've received an amazing education at Thurgood Marshall School of Law, and I'm a practicing attorney, and I feel like I am capable, maybe even more capable, of litigating in court, handling cases, managing clients. I have no issue with that. And I know my counterparts, many of which were here, who also went to Thurgood Marshall School of Law, who are Black women or women of color, receive that same exact education. And so why can HBCUs not be a new normal for those big firms that are hiring in, and not just to meet a quota? And so I think it's normalizing the concept of an HBCU over a PWI when employers are looking to hire people. So that's just my 2 cents.
I think it's an education thing as well, because a lot of people may not be aware of the HBCUs that are out there. And so once they're informed and once they experience, I graduated from Prairie View A&M University with Brenda in undergrad. And so when people experience the level of professionalism that you're able to bring to the table and the skills, then they're familiar with that HBCU. So I think that we kind of knock down those barriers one person at a time with just how we show up. But I'm going to move on to the next question here. How can I be an ally to other young Black attorneys who want to enter private practice in an area that doesn't want them? I'm the only Black woman in a private practice in Northwest Arkansas, and my experience at other law firms have showed me why. Every other Black attorney here works in-house or for Walmart or Tyson. So you can kind of read that there in the group chat, but anyone want to kind of respond, because it sounds like it hasn't been a great experience and she wants to go into a private practice in an area that may not necessarily be as accepting and embracing.
I will say, after my experiences and just growing up, I don't ever force my way into arenas where I'm not wanted or accepted. I think I've gotten past that years ago. I think, like Christy said, I'm a very, very proud graduate of Thurgood Marshall School of Law. And, being able to compare and contrast experiences working in that mid-sized firm that I worked in in Atlanta, it was on the borderline of being a big firm. I'm like, I don't have to force my way in. And anybody that's on this call, there's so much opportunity out there. And it's almost limitless when you build your own opportunity. So anybody that's watching me knows I'm a huge advocate for building your own empire, or building your own business, or building your own ship, because you choose the direction. So that's number one. Number two, if you feel like you're not wanted, there are so many other options out there where you can get the big law or the private experience, and maybe you can talk to someone like Rocio, who's at a big firm right now, and say, how well is the inclusion there? Are they really diverse? Are they accepting? And get different feedback from women that work in those type of firms, and whatever one says yes, they truly are. We may not be the majority, but they accepting, that may be an industry or a firm to go into. So that's my 2 cents. Like I said, I tell my children that we're about to have a little girl, and so again, I'm very, you stand 10 toes to the ground. Don't ever force your way into something or give your time or energy anywhere where it's not appreciated or wanted. So that's where
to answer her question, when you are being an ally, you also have to remember being an ally, once again, is a lifetime commitment. It is not something that you just do temporarily. It is a lifetime commitment. And so I can speak from experience. I'm from a very small town. And as I mentioned earlier, I didn't see a Black attorney until I went to law school. So now I go back home and I practice in that very small town, very white, very conservative town, so that people from my community can see that, hey, I didn't forget about you guys. I'm still here. And I can tell you, I get hell when I go home. They don't like me. They don't like the fact that I'm an attorney, that I'm Black, and that, I know the law. They don't like it. And, if you've ever practiced in rural Texas, you know that it's interesting. So I would say, remember your why. And if this is a practice that you like, an area that you like, continue to do it and do it well and bring on other people, mentor other people. And that's how you be an ally.
Yeah, I would say to both Audia and Brenda's points, essentially it's about building your own table if there isn't room for you at one that exists. And I think you should look at employment and opportunities as a two-way street. Like, someone's not giving you a job, you're earning a job, you're earning that space, and whatever it is that they're paying you, it's not a gift or a handout. And so it's mutually beneficial, right? So you wouldn't want to give the benefit of your expertise and your knowledge and your experience to an organization that is unwelcoming. And you also, as a Black woman, I'm assuming, wouldn't want to be their token or give them the ability to point to you to say, yeah, we have someone here, or, we're inclusive. And meanwhile, you're going through hell internally because it's a toxic environment. And I think ideally, we're hoping that the tide is changing in America to be one with greater emphasis on inclusion and providing opportunities more equitably. So firms and any kind of employment or social organization that isn't welcoming and is resistant to this kind of change will be left in the dust, and it will be very obvious from their employee and leadership makeup where their priorities and values are. So I wouldn't want to be standing with that kind of organization if and when that time comes.
It sounds like
I will say just one quick tidbit that my personal view has been, and probably the number one reason why I have hung around big law as long as I have, is because I do think representation matters in a lot of these spaces where there aren't very many folks who look like us. Now I definitely, who knows, who knows how at some point, I agree with Audia, you have to be respected and you have to be valued. And if that baseline respect and value isn't there, then you should not compromise certain core values like that for purposes of serving as any sort of representatives. But I do think it is important to consider that there are places where it can happen, right? So not every big law is created the same way, not every group. So I like to tell people, this whole bit about certain law firms have certain reputations. I tell summer associates, find your people. Like most big organizations, you will be able to find a tribe of people that will be welcoming and nurturing and and give you what you need, and then you can add value to this organization. Now you have to do your homework, and you have to network, and you have to meet people like us who have maybe spent time in some of those places, who can help identify what those tribes look like and who they might be. And then, you know, the legal community in Houston, people move everywhere, right? People start their own firms, people go to different law firms. So connecting folks to those people, I think, is critical. But I wouldn't off the bat say, oh, you know, obviously in my case, oil and gas is also not known for being a particularly diverse place. So I kind of really went for it in terms of the being welcomed with open arms approach. But I think I have been able to thankfully find people who helped me identify a place of comfort, and who have respected me and guided me. And I think that's what really keeps me you know, focused on helping the next generation do the same thing, so that other people can do what I do and feel welcome.
So I'm just going to add this part. Thank you so much, Rocio. So she said, how can I become an ally to other young Black attorneys who want to enter private practice in an area that doesn't want them? Just to break it down from what I kind of received from that, there's always going to be pushback. I feel sometimes if you're not exactly what they're used to seeing, but sometimes that's not meant to turn you away. Sometimes that's just to see if you're going to accept that challenge. Now, there's a difference between being undervalued and being challenged. If you feel that you're constantly not being valued in whatever space you're looking to be in, your piece is more valuable. But I think that a lot of us, or most of us, have experience having to push the envelope, or someone not necessarily wanting us in a space because we're a little bit different or not what they're used to. And for that, you kind of blaze that trail for whoever's coming behind you. So that's why it's important to continue to be an ally. But that is our last question. And I've enjoyed talking with you guys so much, but I am going to actually pass it back over to Christy and Brenda for them to make the last and final remarks.
Thank you so much, Troy. I really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to help Women of Law with this panel, and your input was valuable as well. And I really am very thankful that we were able to have you on today. I want to say thank you to our panelists, Jazzmine, Rocio, Audia, and Brenda. Thank you so much for your input. This is invaluable information for allies in the legal community and beyond. I think a lot of these same issues that we're seeing in the legal community expand out into the oil and gas community, the energy community, and bigger corporations, and even smaller ones. So I do hope that everybody who is watching today learned something, and that you are challenged to listen and speak up and continue to be an ally in the future, because it's absolutely necessary. With that in mind, I wanted to kind of point everybody to the Women of Law website. If you were interested in supporting a law student, a minority law student, Black female law student with a scholarship, and in the future, hopefully, potentially a clerkship or an internship with a firm, please go to our website, or you can send Cash App to Women of Law, and your donations will go directly to that purpose. And we hope to build in the future. And if you are watching and you're interested in being a mentor, please reach out to us. And we'll be in touch with everybody in the future regarding the We Will program with Bianca Roberson. And so if you are interested in that, please be on the lookout. Brenda, unless you have anything.
I don't have anything. Thank you all for participating. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Women of Law and on Facebook. This was a very necessary conversation, and this is that portion of educating yourself on how to be an ally. So I commend everyone who participated and who logged in to hear our voices.
Okay, thanks so much, guys. And thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you guys later.